All right. So, hi, everyone. This is Imani Vincent. I am a part of the Climate Mental Health Network Gen Z cohort. And joining me today is Vernice Miller Travis, who will introduce themselves in a bit. Our conversation today will focus on generational collaboration, activism, and the importance of addressing burnout as the work continues. So, before we dive in, Vernice, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is, as Imani said, Vernice Miller Travis, and I am a longtime participant, architect, student, activist, theorist, strategist in the environmental justice movement. I'm originally from Harlem, New York. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland now. I've been here for 28 years and am the co-founder of a community-based group, We Act for Environmental Justice in New York City. Um, and we're about to celebrate our 38th anniversary. So been at this for a minute.
Nice. Congratulations on celebrating 30 years. That's amazing.
38 years.
38. Oh, yeah. Congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
Here. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. So,
Okay.
looking back, what first pulled you into activism and what keeps you here after all these years?
Hmm. Well, I'd have to say, Imani, growing up in the 1960s, it was hard not to be aware of all the things that were going on around me. And in the Harlem community, there was just a lot of activity, right? And a lot of support of other efforts that were going on around the world. Very early on, I was aware of the struggle in South Africa. My father was a labor leader, worked at the local municipal hospital where I was born, Harlem Hospital, and where my mom also worked. And the coalition of um, coalition of South African trade unions, COSATU, have been doing a lot of work mobilizing organized labor in Europe and the United States leading up to or throughout the struggle in South Africa. And so, my dad was very aware of that. I remember it was the same year he died, but I remember him getting up in the wee hours of the morning to watch Nelson Mandela walk out of prison on CNN. And it must have been like 3 o'clock in the morning, in New York. But it was important to my dad because he had been supporting that effort and supporting labor, period. Right. So because we were a labor household, the civil rights movement was all the way live in our lives. Um, there was a movement to get more Black teachers into the New York City public education system. One of my teachers, the late great artist Faith Rango, she was my art teacher in from kindergarten to fifth grade. And she was very active in the Black arts movement, which was a movement to get Black artists and their work displayed in the major museums in New York and in the galleries. Um, the Black Panthers were, large and in charge. Um, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I remember thinking, Imani, my God, look at those kids. Look at those students, right? They were everything to me. So, but I was a little kid, right? So, and I always say that, my mother was very lucky that I was a little kid because if I had been old enough, I surely would have joined the Black Panther Party. But I was 9. So, that wasn't going to happen. But all of that was happening while I was growing up, right?
Yes.
And the Harlem community was also a major destination point in the Great Migration, but not just the Great Migration of Black folks from the South, but the Great Migration of Black people in the diaspora from all over the world coming to the United States. And often they landed in Harlem because it had an international reputation as being this thriving, though not wealthy, but yet thriving community of people of African descent, right? So that's how I entered the world, and it shaped my worldview.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It's such a rich history and background that you're sharing, not just of what was happening around you, but how you were seeing it and how it drew you in. Like you were 9 years old, but you knew you wanted to join the Black Panther Party,
I
and you
did.
would have, and you could.
I absolutely did. And, it was for us, it was on the news every night, right? And my dad was an inveterate news watcher. And so every night, the civil rights movement was unfolding on the local news, and the national news. And you couldn't escape it. And we didn't want to escape it, right? And so it was everywhere. And it was a uniquely powerful political and cultural and social period in our history as a nation, and of course around the world. But everything was on the table
Mhm.
when in that period when I was growing up. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I'm curious to know, who was your mentor, or did you have an unexpected guy in this journey? You mentioned your art teacher earlier, and what is one lesson they left with you?
mm, boy, she left so many lessons. This is one. If you've ever studied art, this might resonate. She used
Mhm.
to say to us all the time, no white space, right? Don't just put some color on a white piece of paper. There's a background, there's context, there's, dimension. Do that first and then put the other things, right? So she was always saying that to us, no white space. And that didn't mean, she wasn't saying no white people. That's not what she was saying. She was saying that when you see the world, you don't just see a white background, right? You see everything. And so when you're trying to capture that, or you're trying to put forward a vision or an image, it has to be multidimensional, right? There's grass, there's sky, there's buildings, right? There could be water. We lived in between two rivers, the Hudson River and the Harlem River. Um, she just wanted us to understand that. And mind you, she was talking to elementary school kids, right? And she was teaching us the same way she would teach high school and college students, right? And I'm forever, forever grateful for her influence on me as an artist, right? I love art. I love visual arts. Um, and I have a lot of art in my house, including some of her art. But that was important to me. And it continues to be important to me. And I love color. That might have more to do with the fact that I'm of West Indian descent. Um, and we like color. Uh, my husband did not. So that was always, my late husband did not. So that was always an interesting contrast between the two of us. I wanted color everywhere. And gray was his favorite color. And I would say, gray is not actually a color, right? Uh, but I also had a principal in elementary school, um, Adele W. Timpson. She was the first Black woman principal in the New York City public school system. And she was our principal at the Matthew Henson Elementary School. And until I was in my 40s, maybe early 50s, I believed that every public school in New York City was teaching kids the way our school was teaching kids, which was one, to have pride in yourself, two, to always do your best and always strive for academic excellence, three, to be curious about the world, right? And four, to take you out and experience the world. And Miss Rango had a retrospective show at the Women's Museum of the Arts in Washington, D.C. And I went, took my aunt, and another girlfriend took her aunt, and some other friends. I mean, it was a thing, right? Faith Rango, her whole experience. And before she did like a lecture and walked people through her art in various phases, there was a show and a reception. And she was walking around and talking to people. And so I talked to her and, reintroduced myself. And I said, you haven't seen me since 1970. This was 2000 and something, right? Because I graduated from elementary school in 1970. And I told her about what an impact she had on me. And she said, Miss Timpson built that school and that curriculum with her own hands. She said she went around the New York City education system to different schools And she hand recruited teachers who she thought could really do something special with these young Black babies.
Yes.
And then she had them pour everything into us, right? So I think I have no doubt that the reason that I was always such a good student, one, I loved school, but our school was fed us. It fed our souls, it fed our minds. We had art, we had music, right? We had the great Billy Taylor used to come in and do concerts with us. We were in elementary school, right? But she was planting the seeds of who she wanted us to be. I didn't know that. I literally thought everybody's having the same ball in school that we're having, right? No, it was just us. And if it had not been for going to that show with Miss Rango, I would never have known that. I went my whole life thinking that, wow, you know, I was I've done the things that I've done. I've accomplished the things that I've accomplished because very high expectations were set for me from the time I first stepped foot in school in kindergarten, right? And my first teacher was Black. I didn't have a lot of Black teachers in public school, but my first teacher was Black, Miss Cato. And Miss Cato was friends with Miss Rango. And that's how we got to be doing these special art projects in kindergarten with Miss Rango. But they had faith in us. They had faith in what we could do. And there were no limitations placed on what we could do. And I think that had everything to do with what I went on to do in my life, how I pursued education, how serious I was about it. I may be the only person you've ever met, Imani, who has never, ever cut a class. I've never skipped a day of school unless I was sick. I mean, really sick. And I had to be really sick for me not to go to school. Because school to me was, that's like, if you don't go to school, then what the hell are you going to do with yourself, right? If you're not in school. So I thank my principal and my teachers in elementary school for setting the pace and the course of my life, right? And of course, my family as well. But I think it matters when you get young people at their earliest points of formation and you say to them, we expect absolute excellence from you. No shirking, no excuses, no dodging. You will do your best at all times. And that's what we were told. Now, a part of that is, I'm at the end of the baby boom generation. And the end of the baby boom generation has parents and grandparents who grew up during the Depression, right? And or came up from the South during brutal segregation. So there were no excuses. Nobody was accepting any excuses for anything, and you just had to do your best. And I'm thankful because it's served me well my entire life.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And thank you for sharing that experience because it made me think about the importance of having adults who see something greater within you, even when you can't see it yourself, and creating those opportunities so that you can see what is out there in the world. Because once upon a time, Black people had very limited
Right.
experiences.
That's exactly right.
So it's beautiful to hear how intentional they were about instilling this within y'all that you can see more of yourself in this world in these different capacities, whether it be art, it be music, it be activism. And that's a beautiful thing to hear. I'm curious to know what was a moment of joy or laughter you experienced in activism and it still makes you smile today?
Oh my goodness, I have so many. Um, I have the great, I have had the great fortune of being on this journey to build this movement for environmental justice with a group of really extraordinary human beings who are also some of my dearest and closest friends. Also, a lot of them died before their time. So we lost a lot of people along the way, but a lot of us are still here. And we have been around the world together. And how can I put this? Professionally, we are, no nonsense.
Mhm.
But personally, it's just laugh after laugh after laugh after laugh at ourselves, at each other. Um, just remembering remembering trips around the world to the World Conference Against Racism, the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, and a group of us together, right? Or the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, the World Summit in 1992. And then 20 years later, the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa. We're together, right? And, we're working like crazy people, going to all the sessions, also trying to drive a conversation, particularly at the World Conference Against Racism. We were trying to seed the concept and the construct of environmental racism into the framework of the World Conference Against Racism. And we were successful, but we had to work like dogs to be in a lot of different places at once to seed that conversation, right? Now people talk about it worldwide, but that wasn't the case before we brought this conversation into that space. And just, okay, here's one funny experience. So Peggy Shepard, who's the co-founder of We Act for Environmental Justice, and I, Dr. Beverly Wright, my Aunt Brenda Ross, who lives in New York, we are shopping because that's what we do when we go around the world, right? We intentionally try to invest in the local economy as much as we can, right? But the real things, the real art, the real, the jewelry, the cloth, the everything that is native to that place, right? We don't want nothing made in China. We want the stuff made in South Africa, right? Or Brazil or wherever it is we are. Anyway, we're in the store. So South Africa has these stores that around the country that sell the arts and crafts of mostly women artisans in the villages around the country, right? But they bring them to market in these special stores. So there's one in the waterfront shopping center in Durban. So we're in there. And Peggy looks at this vest. Peggy loves the color. Her favorite color is turquoise and green. My favorite color is orange. And we going through things and we see this vest with this unbelievable beadwork. Unbelievable beadwork. It's mostly turquoise and green. Yes. And I reach for it and Peggy reaches for it. I put it on and I don't take it off. I walk through the whole store with the vest on because I know if I put it down, Peggy's going to buy it, right? So that's just this one, and I still have it and I still break it out. And every now and again, I try to wear it someplace where I know Peggy's going to be, right? Because I know she's going to remember that vest. So that's just one story. I have so many stories like that. Meals we've shared together, celebrations we've had, trips we've taken, conferences we've been at, fundamental conferences, like the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. I got a million wonderful memories from that conference and gathering. But I think when people see us, they think of, sort of the warrior mentality, is sort of what we project. But we are also just regular Black folk, right? Regular people. We're not all Black. And we really enjoy each other's company and we really enjoy being on this journey together, right? And we've had the great privilege of being on this journey together for 30 to 40 years, working together, not every day, right? And when we get together, it's a celebration. It's it's just like I was in New Orleans doing something with Dr. Wright in June. And, she's working every day. We're trying to have this meeting. We're doing some consulting for her. But every night I go out to dinner with Dr. Wright, every night. Right. And the question is not, are we going to dinner? The only question is, where are we going to dinner? Right. That's the only question. So, and I don't have to say to her, Beverly, I'm going to be with you in town for 4 days. Let's make some plans. I don't have to say that. The plans might happen at the spur of the moment, but we are going to be together, right? And we are going to spend some time together. And that's true for us wherever we are. And I guess I'm so very fortunate to have been on this journey with some wonderful, wonderful people who are funny as hell. Dr. Wright is a brilliant sociologist and teacher and builder of institutions. And she's trained up a whole lot of young folk. But when I tell you Beverly Wright is the funniest person I know, she is the funniest person I know. And Dr. Adrian Hollis, another brilliant, brilliant leader in the EJ movement. Adrian is a toxicologist and a lawyer.
Wow.
Adrian could have a full-time job as a comedian. That's how funny she is, right? So I just want people to know that you can do good work, but still enjoy your time on this earth, right? You can do good and meaningful work. You can be deeply ensconced in a fight for social justice and racial justice and environmental justice and climate justice. You can do all of that, but don't lose your sense of self, right? And your purpose, right?
Yes, and that part is very, very important and ties into my next question too, that addresses burnout because burnout is real. And I'm curious, what is one small ritual or habit that's helped you bounce back during these
You
times?
see that?
Yes, I got my
And my toes too. Sometimes, when I'm really in the midst of some really intense work, intense periods, and it can go on for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, right? I have got to have a manicure and a pedicure because sometimes that's the only time that I'm sitting still, not doing something else, not on my phone, not on my laptop, not thinking about processing all of that, just literally having that one experience that is just about me, right?
Mhm.
And I think massages are important. I think personal care time is really, really, really important. And the reason that I know it's important, Imani, is because I have several friends in this work who meant everything to me, who died before their time. And most of them worked themselves to death, right? They didn't mean to. That wasn't their intent. But health issues came up and they should have paid deeper and closer attention to those issues. But they were so focused on the work and the people that they were working on behalf of that they put their own well-being on the side. I have a dear friend, Cecil Corbin Mark. Cecil was the deputy director of We Act for Environmental Justice. Cecil worked for us for 25 years. One day, I want to say it's October will be 4 years, I think, that Cecil has been gone. It was Columbus, Indigenous Peoples Day.
Mhm.
And the staff were working feverishly because that following Thursday was our annual gala, right? So instead of them being off that day, they're working, doing all last minute things, blah, blah, blah. And Cecil keeps saying to people, staff, his colleagues, I have the worst migraine I have ever had. He suffered with migraines. And he just kept saying all day long, he has the worst migraine he has ever had. The next morning, he and his mother shared an apartment in Harlem, in our neighborhood in West Harlem in New York. And his mother goes to wake him up and she can't wake him up.
Wow.
And she gets him to the hospital. Ambulance comes, blah, 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 blah. Cecil had a cerebral hemorrhage and a blood vessel burst. But he was experiencing it, Imani. He thought he was having a migraine, right? So it's happening during the day or on Monday, and he's experiencing it, and he's saying it, but he doesn't know, of course, that that's what's happening. And they fought to try to save him, and his family made the determination to take him off life support while the gala was going on. I had thought we should cancel the gala or at least postpone it. Peggy said that Cecil would want it to go on. Girl, we raised more money than we had ever raised. I was like, look at Cecil, still raising money. Look at him, right? I could tell you so many stories, Imani, so many stories of people who meant everything to me, who
Yeah.
were in that kind of circumstance. So, is this my stupid phone? Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
It's like, where's that sound coming from?
Big
Um,
star.
um so the stopping and taking care part, I didn't always pay attention to that when I was younger. Um, and I try to make that a part of what I'm doing in the day to day, right? So I also try to spend time with my friends. I've been a lot more serious about that this summer than I normally am. I mean, I see them, but I don't see them as much as I would like to, right? And I've done more of that this summer because I recognize that when I'm with them, I'm the happiest that I ever am, right? And so making time for them is really, really important. And I have, and I think building your friendships, maintaining your friendships, of course, taking care of your family and maintaining those relationships is critically important. But I have the good fortune of having a crew of friends who have been my friends since I was in the ninth grade. I was in the ninth grade in 1973. We have been friends for more than 50 years, right? And we are still the best of friends. And it is when I'm my happiest, is when I'm with them. So I try to do some things that make me happy. I like to see live music. I'm gonna try to get me a ticket to go see Layla Hathaway tonight in DC. I Live music is everything to me, right? So I try to do that. Um, I try to, cook for people. I like to, have my friends over for dinner, or we get together and everybody brings something at somebody's house. I like to do that. Um, just, balance the work because the work has been intense. Don't get me wrong. The work has been seriously intense for a very long period of time. And, right now we're in a moment of absolute madness. So you really gotta take care right now to not let the craziness that's happening politically and culturally and geopolitically, to not let it overtake your spirit and your soul, right? Because it so easily could, given the level of crazy, right?
Yes, exactly. And thank you for sharing that last part too, because it's good advice as well for the younger generation, as we're currently in this environment that we are right now, to one, show the value importance of being a collective, having your community of people that you connect with on a regular that can support one another, and to take time for yourself, recharge yourself, because that's valuable and important. So my last question to you before we wrap up, if you had to pass the torch with just 3 words of wisdom to Gen Z activists, what would they be?
Mm. Be true to yourself.
Mm.
My mother used to say, Imani, never lie to yourself, right? And that has really held me in good stead for a really long time. You might want to think X or Y, but the truth really will set you free. And even if the truth is uncomfortable, even if it takes you to a place of even fear, right? As long as you meet it head on with honesty about who you are, about the circumstances around you, about the people around you, right? Try to always face it with 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 honesty, and if possible without fear, you know? Whatever it is, you can work through it. Whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, you can work through it. Take a little piece at a time. I personally am the kind of person that I like whatever it is. Let's put it on the table.
Mhm.
Let's figure it out. And then let's move on. But let's not keep ourselves, stuck in a place of misgiving, misunderstanding, um, uh, distrust, mistrust. Now, there may be some people you encounter that are not good for you,
Mhm.
right? So you got to move on.
Yeah.
But you can do that by always being true to yourself, right? Holding up your values, moving through the world the way you know you were taught to move through the world. That's critically important.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And once again, I appreciate you being willing to share your experience, Bernice. It's been such a fulfilling conversation, and getting to know you more and to learn your journey throughout all of this.
And thank you for your persistence, girl, because you were a persistent somebody to make sure this conversation happened.
Yes, yes, of course. You got to make it happen. Always push through.
Indeed, indeed.
Okay.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.